Oh man, now I don't know if we were going to start now.
Well, I'll start by saying something profound. I have 2 drinks here. Hot tea in my Choco Cat cup and ice-cold Gatorade in my Pepe Le Pew cup. It don't get more bitchin' than that, I tell ya. Hot tea, cold Gatorade, a phone in the hand, Slammin' Stan, happening. This is Vandal Drummond, joining, as always, with my compadre, Alfredo Esparza. How you doing tonight, Fredo?
Pretty good, and I think Dix is already on, too.
I thought I heard his voice.
Yeah.
No, you didn't.
Oh, my Lord. Okay, I didn't.
No, you didn't.
There must be a Bixie demon ghost floating around them if it wasn't actually his voice.
Maybe he's in our head.
Oh, totally. A lot of things are in my head. I was wiped out by a 102-degree fever 2 nights ago and was just in this weird delirium all night long. A fever is a fascinating thing when you resist the urge to, just count on how terrible it feels. Your mind just does weird fucking things, I must tell you. I don't know if either of you ever had a fever that high.
I haven't.
Oh, for the most... What's that?
Yeah, I have too. I mean, it's not fun.
It's not fun at all. The weird thing is, in the middle of it all, my writer's block went away. If I had the energy to go to the computer and start typing, like there would be no writer's block. Like all the stories I think of that I have trouble writing in a normal mental state, my mind was set free and was just totally cracking out the stories, the plots, everything that I work on and have a hard time doing. But of course, the physical energy was not there. And it's so pleasant the next day waking up in your own sweat when the fever breaks.
Was Fredo there as a scarecrow?
Well, I can see Bixie Demon. Your writer's block is not there. Power to you, man. That's so cool. Well, this week on Slammin' Stan, there's 2 main things we're focusing on. One, of course, is the situation with Averno signing with WWE. We'll be leaving CMLL very shortly, and I recommend to all of you to go to luchaworld.com and read Alfredo's ramblings on that. He wrote a really, really cool article on where Averno will fit in there and what this might mean for Mystico, what this means for CMLL.
I even touched on Durango Kid.
Yes, you did. That was an excellent story, I gotta say.
And I was going to add the part where he actually helped you out of your situation, but then I thought, oh great, I don't think I should do that.
I would have gotten a kick out of that. Well, that is the first thing I thought of when I read his name in there. Well, when my car was stolen in Compton about 10 years back, somewhere around there.
Yeah, actually, more recently, probably like 7 years or something like that.
Well, when was it? It was almost 10 years ago because I remember it happened right after 9/11 because I remember running into Shooting Star and it was the first time we'd seen each other in a long time and we were just talking about the recent happening. But what I'll never forget is just going out there, my car's gone, and almost all the wrestlers had left except for Durango Kid and his little posse there, and he was kind enough to give me a lift back to Walnut, California, and he knows how to slam the gas pedal to the floor. So I got home really fast, maybe a little nerve-wracked, but very, very quickly.
Yeah, I was gonna write about that, but then I thought, well, I'll just write. He's actually a pretty good guy.
Yeah.
I didn't know if that was too much information to throw out.
Nah, it wouldn't have bothered me at all.
Oh, cool.
The other subject we're going to touch upon tonight is, of course, we're going to look back at the Macho Man, Randy Savage. Of course, that's what everybody is talking about these days, and there's no wondering why. What we were going to touch on tonight is our own individual recounts of the Macho Man's career.
Yeah, we'll get to that. We'll get to that once Dan and Ryan call.
Yes, that we shall do.
But then it's going to sound weird where we're all repeating the same thing over and over.
Well, one of the things you touched upon, Fredo, with CMLL is on Galavision, just the annoying...
The commercials.
Yeah, the commercials. Not just the commercials being annoying in themselves, but they show the same commercials over and over again, and they just keep just barraging you with them. I mean, it's amazing.
You know the great thing, if you watch the NWA show at like 11 p.m., you'll watch the same shake weight commercial like 5-6 times.
Oh my God!
But in English. But I mean, that's really what's hurting that show. Like for some reason, the AAA show doesn't look like you don't really notice the commercials.
Yeah,
like,
I highly recommend everybody who wants to watch CMLL on Galavision, DVR it, TiVo it, tape it, whatever means. Don't watch it live. Have that fast forward button at your thumb, and every time they go to a commercial, just click it till it gets to the next match, because the wrestling on it is quite good. It was really, really excellent wrestling, at least on the past 2 weeks. I've only caught the past 2 weeks.
Yeah. Well, next week's going to have the final, I think, from that tournament that they were.
Yes, and those tournament matches have so far all been very good matches.
Yeah. Well, the main event's going to be the last match that they had was really good.
Yeah, there's a number of things I really enjoyed about the tournament matches. Well, this will sound like an odd thing to point out first, is I think Shocker is the greatest corner man I have ever seen.
I know, seriously.
He is so cool. He stands out.
Excited. He gets all excited when his guy's like on the verge of losing.
Yes. It's just, he is so perfect in that role. He stands out. You notice him. I love how he comes dressed in a suit.
Yeah.
It's not just the standard coming out in tights and a T-shirt and a towel. I mean...
But see, it fits all those guys. Like, Blue Panther really does. That's really who he is.
Yeah, that's true.
Him wearing a T-shirt and wearing his tights or whatever he's wearing, or warm-ups or whatever. That's who he is. That's how he
you're
acts.
Absolutely right.
And then Shocker, it's the suit, and then he has a lollipop, and then he's always carrying like a notepad or something with him.
Yes.
It looks like he has a playbook or something.
Or yeah. The first thing I thought, is that a day planner in his hands? And
yeah, he's probably got all the moves.
And what I love is he's unique. He stands out, yet he doesn't upstage his wrestler.
No.
He's really, really. You know, I hope he's one guy who really has, who really keeps his demons in check, because he is so talented.
He'd make a great manager.
He would. He would bring the art of being a manager back into fashion.
Yeah, I think that's the thing I like about that whole tournament thing, that they actually picked 4 guys that actually fit with the coaches. You know.
Yes, I agree.
It's not.
And they've utilized them well. And which match was it? It was Angel de Oro versus Fuego, where Ultimo Guerrero actually interferes, and both he and Blue Panther, who
Negro Casas.
No, Ultimo Guerrero. I remember Negro Casas in one of the previous matches, but this was the one where Ultimo Guerrero interferes, and he and Panther just tease like they're about to nail each other, but they don't until the match is over.
I think
which
that was
is
Casas.
perfect.
I think that was Casas.
Well, Casas did an earlier match. Who was Casas managing?
Casas and Blue Panther are feuding.
Yeah, but they actually had Guerrero and Panther get into it too.
They went at each other too.
Yes.
Post-match. There's so many of those matches that you can't really tell anything.
It's so true. But it was a separate match. I can't remember who Casas was in the corner of.
Yeah.
But of course, this last show the show wound up with a singles match with Averno and La Mascara, and pretty much kind of kicked off the feud that's going to lead to the Mask versus Mask.
Yeah, which the Cubs fans spoiled the finish for.
Yes, I read that in your piece too. Cubs fan, you will rue the day you spoiled the surprise for Fredo.
You know he's catching a lot of flack from Mexicans right now.
Is he really? Because of that?
Yes, because apparently you kind of know what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
You don't write about it. And I think, because I think a lot of the guys, like the Super Luchas guys, pointed out that they don't write they never go that far. They never mention that Averno's leaving, so he's obviously going to lose. You know what I mean?
Were these people angry when their friends told them when Rey Bucanero lost his mask that, hey, he has the WWF logo on his tights, so I bet he's going to lose?
But he dropped it like in one of those tournaments that very few people saw at the time.
And yeah, that's true. Yeah, it wasn't a regular CMLL show. It was
it had a large crowd, but I mean it wasn't something that was really that known. Plus back then, I don't think there was as much WWE in Mexico as there is now.
No, this is true. And you never know with CMLL. I mean, likely Averno will drop the mask, but remember the match with when Blue Panther dropped the mask? Nobody saw that coming.
Yeah, that was actually that's what I thought when before we heard the Averno news. I thought this was the first time they had a matchup where you really couldn't tell who was going to drop their mask.
Yeah.
So Mascara wrestling without a mask would be kind of stupid if he didn't change his name.
Yeah,
that's true.
What about? Well, yeah, I guess he's the Mask, which is worse than Mask of the Year 2000 or 100 Faces not having any mask.
Yeah, but I think he would change his name too, because I mean, he comes from
to La Cara.
From who? La Cara. See, he comes from since he's a Brazo, he could always just switch to one of the Brazo names or something.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, that's actually be quite a clever idea.
But see, I think people don't really care who. They kind of know who's gonna. I mean, look at the Hijo Santo matches. You always know Hijo Santo's gonna win. You go because you want to see who's gonna drop, what the guy's gonna look like.
Exactly.
What's her Enrique? Who was it? Enrique Yanez? Mm-hmm. His mom thought it was possible that Santo could lose.
Ways can fool somebody's mother.
By the way, that story is in that 101 Strangest Wrestling Matches book.
Oh, really?
Yes. It's actually it's not bad. The book. I mean, for super hardcore fans like us, it's probably largely gonna be stuff you've heard. But I think a lot of people will find it pretty. Probably will find it pretty interesting.
I must confess, I have not heard of this book. What's the scoop behind it?
No, it's a British book that got big, sort of redistributed here in the U.S. And it's a guy who writes for either Power Slam or Fighting Spirit, one of the two big British wrestling magazines. And it's actually nice design book. All slick paper, lots of photos, and just it's. All sorts of just stuff like that. So, that story, which, for anyone, I wonder if there is anyone listening who doesn't know the story, where it was Enrique Yanez against El Santo, and Santo was still a heel, but he was already beloved, and Yanez puts on such an amazing performance that the fans block security from stopping them, and they carry Yanez to the back, even though he lost to Santo, and won't let him so he won't get his hair cut. He goes home. He goes home. His mom sees he has his hair, and she starts crying because she thinks her son unmasked El Santo. And then he explains what happened, and she demands that he cuts his hair.
I love it. That's awesome.
Wait, you didn't know that one?
I never heard that.
Wow. I think it was in the Enrique Yanez Meltzer bio, maybe, was the first place I heard it. Was it Meltzer who did it? I mean, maybe it was a Meltzer bio that... Yeah, I think it was Meltzer obituary, maybe that Jose had on it, something like that.
Oh my gosh, maybe I read it and I just forgot. Maybe
either that or Jose did something. Oh, or Jose did it for the...
Might be for Lucha Week here or something.
That is awesome.
For Lucha
I love
Week
that.
here at La Arena.
Yeah, I think that's probably what it is. Crazy. Dan's on the line, I think.
Yeah, I am.
Dan Sparron?
I was catching the tail end of that story, which I haven't heard for a long time. That's a great story. I remember that one.
That is so awesome. I love it. Well, last podcast we did was 2 Thursdays ago, and the very next morning was when wrestling lost.
Kurt, did you were you shocked that happened right after we did the show? Usually,
yeah, I was shocked. Period.
Usually the deaths happen right before our show, and we have something we always have to talk about death.
Yeah, it's so true. Well, I mean, it almost, and I'm sure to some people would sound like old news because it was a good 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, Randy Savage passed away the very next day after our last podcast.
Yeah, the next morning.
Yeah, I was at work, and I texted a friend of mine who I thought was going to be at work that day and wasn't. And I was telling her, like, hey, what's up? I didn't see you here today. And she said, oh, it's my day off. And she said, doesn't that suck about Macho Man? And I just sat there going, oh, my gosh, that must mean he died.
Yeah.
So, she texted me back and said, yep. And then I just went on Google and saw I was shocked by the news, but I was also shocked by just how many news sources were on the story within hours.
Yeah.
It was absolutely mind-blowing. And I know this sounds strange. I mean, he was somebody who, for a long time lived a pretty high-octane lifestyle. I mean, classic wrestler of the 80s. Was on the juice for quite a while. But I was still shocked when I heard he had passed away. For some reason, I pictured this guy lasting well into his 70s or 80s. I know other people who feel that way. Did that strike any of you?
I don't know. I mean, I guess he's not necessarily someone you really think of as being a guy. I don't know. I guess when you really think about it, he was a small. He's pretty. One of many smaller guys who, got much bigger. With steroids, and so it's really, when you hear, heart attack, it's not surprising in that sense. But no, it's not something you really thought about in any way.
Yeah, he wasn't a person that was on my list of, oh no, he's going to be the next one.
But, I thought the same thing that Sean Waltman mentioned. That he thought, I thought it was going to be Scott Hall.
Yes.
I always, because every single week it's like Scott Hall's in the hospital, or he's arguing with his ex-wife about going to the hospital. He does an update on his Facebook page. It kind of gets really weird with him.
Yeah, that must be that must be hard on everybody just seeing that linger.
Yeah.
And this one just
just came out of nowhere.
Exactly.
Well, I think also that there was a lot of sadness when it came to it also, besides the fact of all the memories. And again, when somebody like Randy Savage, depending upon again the age of the of whoever it is, a lot of the guys were kids when Savage was first coming up. And to them, it was the same thing as for us watching Freddie Blassie and Bruno Sammartino and all those other guys back then. So it's always hard whenever you lose something from your childhood.
Yeah,
and I think for a lot of people is that way. Also, I think for people like myself who are a little bit older than that, I remember him, quite like it was yesterday, coming into the WWE, where I had heard of him before, and then all of a sudden you say, oh my God, Randy Savage is coming in, and it was one of those things. I think that one of the sadness parts about it was that I think a lot of people felt there was, and when I say run, I don't mean like coming back into the ring or whatever, but there was one more set of appearances left, and whether that was a Hall of Fame or something, that people were going to see him one more time, and it was going to be like a nice cap on the whole Macho Man career and whatever. And unfortunately, we're not going to get that. We're not going to be able to see him come back and be himself and joke around and do all that stuff, one more time. And I think that was also a lot of sadness besides losing someone that way, is that they felt like, the guy the guy basically took himself out of publicity, of the public life, the last few years. And I feel like he probably didn't need it, but it would have been nice, I think, one more time to kind of show him that he's remembered. And I think if there's anything, again, the outpouring from everywhere. On my iPad, I have a subscription to a service, and whenever there's a news update, it'll bring up a little push message or whatever.
You have an iPad?
Yeah.
Oh.
I have the first one though.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't have the second one. But
I don't have any.
One of the most poignant photos I saw as I was Googling,
I like the fact that Fredo's more upset about the iPad than he is Randy Savage.
Oh, one of the most poignant photos I saw as I was Googling for information on Savage the day after his passing was I can't remember. It was one of the regular news sources, not one of the wrestling pages, but there was a photo of him at some Christmas benefit. And he was holding a little kid in one arm. He had his big white beard, and he's reciting a visit from Saint Nick for all the kids. And I don't know, that just really got me. And it looked like it was from the last couple of years.
Well, yeah, I was going to say, wait, was it Savage dressed up as Santa, or was it Savage from a few years ago when he had the big white beard?
I don't know. Maybe he had the big white beard and they just thought, hey, you look like Santa, dude. But
well,
that really tickled me for some reason. The first thing I remember about Randy Savage was in 1982, VCRs were still somewhat of a luxury item. And that was when I was sharing an apartment with another fan, Lloyd Lee. And we used to correspond with a guy named Norman Dooley who... he used to put out a newsletter called The Weasel's World of Wrestling. At the time, he was Jim Cornette's best friend. And, before it was really acceptable to write a newsletter that was non-kayfabe, he would write a no kayfabe newsletter, and he would review all the Memphis shows he went to. He would also review all the ICW shows he went to, which obviously was Angelo Poffo's promotion. And we loved reading the reviews of those shows because they would have us in stitches. Because despite the fact that these shows had people like Randy Savage, Lanny Poffo, Bob Roop, the cards a lot of the time were comical at how poorly they were promoted, how on the cheap they were done, which I know is one of Angelo Poffo's legacies. I mean, he even wore a mask as the miser, so he could even rib himself on that one. But they'd write about things where the dressing room was too small, so wrestlers sometimes would be practicing their high spots right in front of the fans before the matches. And Dooley, like I said, since the VCRs were still a luxury, we didn't have one. What Dooley would do is he would send us audio cassette tapes of the Memphis shows and the ICW shows. And the Memphis shows, I mean, what can you say? Those were entertaining even without visuals. Just hearing Lance Russell and Jimmy Hart, hearing those voices was just entertaining. The ICW shows were entertaining for a different reason. I know they did TV from several different venues, but this particular location they did it was a very, very small TV studio. And when we'd be listening to the audio and we'd be hearing the wrestlers getting cheers or jeers, it sounded like there were maybe 3 people cheering or booing. And we finally asked Norman Dooley, what's the story with that? Is it just really bad miking? And he said, well, no. Lately they've been doing their TV tapings. I think he said it was like on Tuesday afternoons when everybody is still at work. And so just 9 or 10 people would show up. And there would be so many things you could say about this show that was just laughable, including when Lanny Poffo and Randy Savage were feuding, they didn't have somebody to do the interviews. So who would be the greatest orator to do interviews? Why, Lanny Poffo, of course. So on one of these shows, Lanny Poffo was interviewing Randy Savage about his upcoming match with Lanny Poffo. And, you know, the thing Lloyd and I would always say is, what the fuck? And we'd ask Norman Dooley, what the fuck? And Norman Dooley would just respond something like, I don't know, what the fuck? So you have this promotion that is just filled with unintentional laughs, but, you know, the things that we were always told was both Lanny Poffo and Randy Savage were just excellent workers, excellent on the mic, and there was always this frustration that, you know, because they were kind of sticking with, you know, their father sticking by his side and, you know, running an outlaw promotion and causing trouble with the rival promotions, that you were never going to get to see their greatness. So despite hearing tons of Randy Savage interviews, I never actually saw Randy Savage wrestle until he hit, you know, the WWF. And, you know, I had heard so many stories about how great he was, and, you know, I almost thought, oh my God, is all the hype going to kill it for me? Is hearing so much about how great he is going to make him seem just so-so? And that was not the case. He was just, you know, such an innovative, ahead of his time worker. And it's really awesome that he kind of finally broke from, you know, ICW is one of those few promotions I would call an outlaw promotion, because they ran, you know, rather than an indie promotion, they were outlaw because they were so beyond the fringe. And
well, but they really were an outlaw promotion. If you go back to the ways the NWA was at that time, I mean, you know, they had that big trust, and anytime anybody would come into your area, you know, the NWA would get together and help you, you know, drive these interlopers out of your area. But if you look at the most amazing thing, you know, I find that ICW Memphis feud, which is, honest to God, for real, to be, I would love to see someone write a book on that, because that was just an absolutely fascinating time where you had all the guys carrying guns. Because they had no idea.
Including Lance Russell.
Yeah, including Lance Russell, you know.
I'm trying to picture Lance Russell with a gun. I picture him saying, okay, now, Mr. Poffo, Mr. Savage, I really hate to pull the trigger on this thing. It would really break my heart.
Well, you know, and I think probably, I can't think of another wrestling feud in America. Down in Mexico, it's been quite different, but that was such a powder keg like that one was. I mean, that's the one that everybody usually talks about first whenever, you know, though they get around to the Aunt and Uncle one and all the other stuff. But that one down there where the guys were showing up buying tickets at ringside, you know, and, you know, and there was all kinds of, I mean, that's just a fascinating time. But they really were, you know, they really were an outlaw promotion. It was like Robin Hood down there. They were coming in.
That's a good way of putting it.
To go after the big kingpins in the area. And I think one of the things that first got Savage's notoriety is all through, and it was still there during his WWF run too, but especially during that time with ICW and with Memphis, is that he was absolutely crazy.
Yeah,
absolutely crazy and fearless. And there was, I mean, again, you talk about taking a guy and just amping his own personality and putting it out there. You know, what you saw on those TV, if you watch those ICW or those early Memphis ones, they really and truly, I mean, you look at that guy and you go, you know, this guy could snap at any second. Who knows what he'll do?
I actually remember one of my, from that first year I was hearing those audio tapes of ICW and stuff, that the same source, Norman Dooley, I remember told us about the incident when Savage broke Bill Dundee's jaw.
Yeah.
And I know there's been different renditions of the story, and I have no idea which one is the most legit, but as it was understood at that time, Savage and a couple of the other ICW wrestlers The only other one I remember being with him was supposedly Pez Whatley.
Mm-hmm.
They knew of a gym where Dundee liked to work out on a certain day of each week. And I guess they waited for him to come out of the gym, and they were just posturing and stuff like that. And the most recent stories I've read claim that Dundee pulled out a gun, but the story we heard at the time, at least, was that Savage just out of nowhere cold-cocked Dundee, and that Pez Whatley practically had a nervous breakdown on the spot. Just like, I didn't think we were going to do this. And I remember at the time, the Jarrett side was really trying to keep it hushed. In fact, I remember Norma, Dooley at the time was saying, if you could please not tell other, newsletter correspondents about this right now, because they weren't sure whether Dundee was going to take out a lawsuit, whether, how they're going to handle it. I guess as it turned out, Dundee just denied it ever happened because he didn't want to look, like he got his ass kicked. There's no
fell off a horse on
ass
TV,
kicked by Dundee. I mean, by Savage. But anyway, I remember that, and just at the time, I had never heard of anything like that. I mean, that was pretty mind-blowing.
Well, and also you have to look at when they eventually did bury the hatchet and they brought Savage into Memphis. They did that whole angle, which now seems so stereotyped and done to death all the time. And that is the invasion, the guys running in. But as legend has it, there were people that thought this was absolutely for real. And if you are lucky enough, I mean, luckily there's enough of this stuff around that if you look on YouTube or if you pick up some of the Corey Macklin DVDs, which are usually a pretty good bargain for like $10 or $12, you get 3-4 hours worth of stuff on there, and you can follow a lot of this stuff. And it looks, it's the kind of thing where, I think if the cops had showed up, they would have tasered him because he just seemed so completely out of control. And it was one of those rare times when people, longtime wrestling fans who, kind of knew, what the score was, for a second thought, well, all that other stuff is fake, but this is real. This is real. This is really, going on. And, they ran Savage through all the stuff with Lawler down there, and then of course they did that thing that Lawler always loves to do, and that is where a couple of heels are beating him up really bad, so he goes out and brings in, the most dangerous man in the world, who is usually somebody he used to feud with, whether it was, Austin Idol or Dundee or Bam Bam Bigelow or somebody like that. He would bring them in, and just that stuff with Savage has such an edge to it at that time, which really makes it a lot of fun to watch, and there's an intensity to it that I'm hard pressed to think of anyone who could really out intensify Randy Savage when it comes down to it.
Yes, you wonder if another wrestler was in that situation and even tried it during that day, if they could have pulled it off, because he seemed so, to the naked eye, he just seemed so intense and so legit. I mean,
well,
I never heard who he was, and I heard him talking. I'd just say, this is one guy I ain't messing with.
Yeah, and his interviews were, just incredibly intense. He was just, balls to the wall with the interviews. Just an awesome interview.
And when he got to the WWF, and it's funny because when you look at it, when he came in, he was basically wearing pretty much the same outfits that he was wearing in Memphis. Everything was pretty much the same. He was dialed down just a little bit in the beginning before they would start it out. But the stuff that he was doing was really so far ahead of its time, whether it be the interviews or or the work in the ring or whatever. And that's why he wound up having to work with a lot of guys he did, because there weren't that many guys who could hang with him. And it was also very fortunate for Savage that, Hogan, realized there was money there, and so did McMahon. But also, when you think about, they talk about, Hogan's main main handful of opponents. You have all these other guys, but the three guys I always think of with Hogan were Piper, Andre, and Savage. Andre, unfortunately, by the time he got with Hogan, they did a couple big matches for pay-per-view mostly, but, Andre was too far gone at that point. Piper never played fair with with Hogan. It was like Piper was just not going to, not play well with him. But Savage, for what it was worth, realized, well, there's some money to be made here, and I'll just follow along and do what I need to do. And when you think about it, we all know Hogan's not a great actor, okay? And poor Elizabeth, did the best she could in those situations. But when you think about the whole famous, face turn and the mega powers and then the heel turn, that was like a year, maybe even a year and a couple months worth of storylines that were carried by Savage and almost Savage alone.
Yeah.
And he could carry almost anything. A number of people have mentioned, I never even thought about this before, he was the only one who made that King of the Ring thing work.
Yeah.
I mean, Harley Race, it was kind of a sad thing, like, they're making Harley Race wear a crown. But Macho Man Savage as the King, that worked.
Well, like in anything.
Duggan?
I'm sorry?
You didn't like King Duggan?
or King Haku.
King Haku actually was probably the only guy close to it that made it work. But
didn't they tag on with Andre?
I kind of like King Haku.
King Haku was not bad, but then again, you got to remember Haku. And if for some reason he is listening, please don't bite my nose off.
Yeah.
He wasn't exactly the most colorful guy in the world.
No, this is true.
So you give him a little something, and he was able to give him a little personality. Savage, of course, like you were saying, just made that thing work. The Macho King, that was the whole deal with that. And again, the fact that he could take the Ultimate Warrior and get what he did out of him.
I'll never forget when my youngest godson was 3 or 4 years old. That was when they came out with the Randy Savage King action figure.
Yeah.
And Elena and I bought him one of those WWF rings for Christmas and the Macho Man figure. And he's asking, why does this guy have a crown? I'm saying, because he's the king. He's Randy Savage, the king. And like I said, this was Christmas. And the next day, we're all channel surfing. And there's some Christmas special, and it was a pretty psychedelic Christmas special by one of those Trinity Broadcasting Networks or something. But it shows Jesus in this, like, splendorous gown going up this stairway to heaven, and he's wearing a crown. And my godson gets excited. Oh, it's Randy Savage, the king! And the poor kid couldn't understand why I was doubled over.
Hey, Kurt, did you do a job for the action figure?
Of course I did.
You've done jobs for everybody, so you might as well have done one for the action figure. That's
right. I did one for Nikki. Actually, I jobbed to everybody, including Harry Hell, which was the only time I felt a little disgraced about doing a job. The only time.
Oh, how can we actually bring Harry Hell up in the same 15 minutes of me talking about Savage so far?
That's right. I guess you want to do polar opposites, I mean.
Well, let's go around the horn here, and just if everybody could give their one of their favorite Savage memories, and let's start with Fredo because he'll try to duck out of it. By the way, that was a great article you wrote.
Oh, thank you.
That was excellent.
Well, my favorite was the Steamboat feud. That was my favorite.
Yeah.
The whole thinking Steamboat was practically, going to lose his voice and everything. I thought that was probably the best one that I ever saw.
Now, I remember you, Fredo, you had written that story that one of the ways you discovered Savage's greatness was through the Johnny Legend rock and roll wrestling tape.
Yeah, because I mean, I had already seen Randy Savage in WWF at the time, and I wasn't a big WWF fan. I was more of a Mid-South world-class fan, and so when I bought that tape, that's when I started noticing Randy Savage more often. I was like, oh, okay, he's pretty cool. So I started watching more WWF after that. He was like one of the few guys I liked in WWF.
Ryan, how about you?
You know, I have a lot of good memories about Macho Man, and it was just so fun to watch him wrestle. I mean, he can make you know, the lousiest jobber. He can make that kind of match seem exciting to watch on, you know, Saturday mornings. I mean, once his music started playing, you know, you knew you were going to be entertained. And two interviews in particular that I remember that just make me laugh was, if you remember the old Tuesday Night Titans, and they had Macho and Elizabeth on there with Vince, and they're talking, and all of a sudden this flower salesman or whatever is looking around for Elizabeth, like he can't see her sitting there on the stage. He's like, Elizabeth, is Miss Elizabeth here? And then you hear the band in the background playing this like little, you know, hokey delivery music or something, you know.
What? Did Mr. McFeely, I was going to say Mr. McFeely's theme song on Mr. Rogers, but then I realized I wasn't sure if he had a theme song.
Well, if he did, they were playing that, you know, and it was just the funniest thing, and I loved how Macho Man just took that and made it work, you know, and took the flowers, and I don't know, I think he like, you know, kind of gently, you know, bopped Elizabeth over the head with them and wound up smashing him on the ground, but it was entertaining. And the other interview that I remember that was really great was talking about the Savage Steamboat feud right after he had done the thing with the crushing the larynx of Steamboat. Yeah. There was an interview, if you remember, with Bruno Sammartino, and he was back.
You animal.
And I remember at the time I was dating a girl. We were watching this you know, this segment on TV, and all of a sudden Bruno turns around and says, "You piece of slime," and runs after him and like starts beating him. And this girl that I'm with is laughing, just like busting up. She goes, "Oh my gosh, look at the announcers kicking that wrestler's butt," you know. It was just the funniest thing. And you know, he was just an awesome entertainer. You knew that you're always going to be, you know, greatly entertained watching him, and just one of my all-time favorites. Super guy, you know, super wrestler.
How about you, Bix? Anything?
I mean, so many things. Just like what comes to mind. First time I ever saw the Steamboat match was at a friend's house. He had a tape of it off pay-per-view, and he also had the Steamboat and Savage WWF LJN big rubber action figures. And I guess he had memorized the match by that point, so he was able to do the match in sync with the action figures to the TV.
And that's great.
Just what else? There was something that came to... this isn't something that I had actually seen till, you know, after he died, but his first appearance on Arsenio Hall is one of the most amazing things I've ever seen. I mean, he just completely just like owns the stage, and he's funny, and he's still able to be a heel because it was right before WrestleMania 5, but I've never seen a wrestler talk show appearance as good as that one.
Yeah, you're probably absolutely right. The other thing I always remember that I always got a big kick out of was when they first brought him in, and the whole idea he was the hottest free agent in the WWF, and all the managers were vying for his contract, and they did that thing finally where all the managers were in the ring, and Savage got in to introduce who his new manager was going to be, and they brought out Elizabeth. And you know, again, it's just when you go back to Elizabeth at that time, you know, it was obvious whenever you looked at her most of the time, she had no idea what was going on or where she was or any of those things. But yet, it was still at the same time, there was something, you know, that was very warm about her that came through. And especially now, I think it's always hard to look at her now and knowing what the end of the line was for her. It's hard, you know, not to feel very sad when you see her. Yeah. with Savage, I remember, and again, here's Bruno again. They bring her out, and he's going, "Wow, is that some kind of movie star?" I always remember that. And again, I think always, and God, ring work wise, all you got to do is I pick up and look. I got the Savage DVD like most people did last year or so when it came out, and it's like, how can you pick a favorite match off that?
Yeah.
You can't. Every one of them is good. Even you go back to like the Wrestling Classic when he had to wrestle the Junkyard Dog. Still,
he could make anyone look great.
He could always make anyone look great, and that was always the great thing about it. And there's so many memories. I mean, there's few wrestlers who have ever been around who have, like I said, we sat here and we each took one now, but we could go through make 2 or 3 rounds on this, and we could probably eventually all hit something that we don't remember at that time. Match-wise, I was lucky enough to be at the sports arena when and to see a match that is talked about quite a bit, and that was the heel versus heel Jake Roberts Randy Savage match. They taped for Saturday night's main event, which was very funny because they shot it at 2:00 in the afternoon, and the place was jammed. I mean, absolutely jammed, and it really was a loaded show. I mean, because you had just had Piper turning face.
Yeah, they had Piper versus Orton that day.
Yeah, and he was. It was either Orton or Morocco. It might have been Morocco. But because Morocco and Orton were hanging out.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
But they also had, I think it was Hogan and One Man Gang. That was the day that the Hart Foundation debuted the Pink Tights.
Yep.
And they had that great match between Jake Roberts and Randy Savage, who really, I mean, and it wasn't until later when they did the full turn and the whole snake at the wedding reception thing. But
that snake better be the Venomine.
But you have, here you had 2 guys, one who was the master of the bubbling under intensity, and you had the other guy who was just crazy. And I forgot, and again, the great thing about Jake Roberts when he would do an interview is he would say a lot of things that made no sense. But the way he was saying them made complete sense. And I remember he said something like, Macho Man, I've been banging on the door and breaking out all your windows, and I have no idea what you're trying. Or something like that. It was one of those typical Jake kind of fuzzy logic things he used to do. But that was a great match. It really was, and it was also so unusual.
I've heard Vince say that that's the match that made him decide to make Jake a babyface.
Yeah, because it's perfect. Because the thing about Jake was, as good a heel he was, the guy could sell like crazy.
Yeah.
So that was the perfect as a babyface. But yeah, I mean, I fondly I can sit there and think about that show fondly, going back, and I think actually I even remember there was one match. I mean, it's like, here's all these great matches, and one of these is not like the other, And in the middle of this whole thing is the cool down match before they brought up one of the other ones. They had Jack Kruger, who was a referee and a jobber at that time, wrestle, I think, Jerry Monty or somebody like that.
Was this at the sports arena at that time?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember that. I was actually there.
Yeah, that was and I just again, I can remember almost all of that show because it was just so it was like a festival to be there. Everybody was reacting like this was WrestleMania. And it was a great match too. I can see it in my head now even. And when I watched it on the DVD, it lost none of its power. So I mean, and anything you pull out of Memphis, and I think we would be remiss, Kurt, if we didn't mention our old friend Jeff Walton, who as Tux Newman managed Randy Savage for a short period of time. And why don't you tell that story he told us?
Oh, about when the fans hit the ring?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Oh, I remember Walton telling us just, I can't remember who Savage was wrestling, but...
Well, Walton was managing Savage and Bruiser Brody down there. And
he managed both of them, actually.
He managed both of them, And I remember what happened was that something had happened in the ring, and the fans had surrounded the ring and was pounding on the apron. And all of a sudden,
a biker hit the ring.
Yeah, this biker-looking guy jumps up onto the apron and starts coming through the ring. And Jeff looks over and he sees, and I'm trying to do justice to this. I don't remember exactly everything word by word, but from what I remember is that the guy had a gun in his waistband.
Wow.
And Jeff's standing there going, uh-oh, what do I do now? I can't get out of the ring. What do I do? And all of a sudden, over top of his head, Savage had climbed to the top turnbuckle and dove over Jeff's head, landed on the guy, and basically, from what Jeff said, took the guy's eye out.
Yep. Yeah, he took one of the guy's eyes out, and then he basically said to Jeff, "Okay, let's get out of here." And
yeah, he turned to Jeff and go, "Let's go." And the audience parted, and they went up the aisle.
Wow.
Yeah, I think if I saw an eye exit somebody's head, whoever I was in the crowd, okay, let him go. I don't care how angry I am.
Oh, come on, you can pop it back in. You can pop it back in. Come on.
Yeah, just ask Vader.
Yeah.
Oh Lord.
Wow.
On the other hand, don't ask Jesse Barr.
Oh, that's true. Oh God, yes.
No, I remember hearing the story. What's that?
I said, speaking of Haku.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
that was another one.
True. Now I heard somewhere that the fight started because I guess Jesse Barr, they were in Puerto Rico walking somewhere, and there's a guy who was like digging a ditch, and Barr kicked some of the dirt in the guy's face, and Haku ordered him to apologize or something like that, and Barr wouldn't, and well.
Uh-oh.
I don't know if that's myth or if that's what happened, but...
Well, I think it's because Barr didn't want to do it because he's a funk, and funks don't apologize.
Not even.
Well, then after that, I'd say I don't want to be a funk anymore.
But no, I mean, I think it's sad because I fully expected. I really thought after they showed the Savage video on the WWE, and boy, that was really good.
Yeah.
And the same woman who edited that one also did the Edge one. And that's a keeper. You need to hang on to those people because those people really were able to, convey a lot of emotion. And it was hard not to kind of tear up watching it, to tell you the truth. Because
and a lot of people did.
It brought back so many memories of really what seems to be 1,000 years ago. Even though it doesn't seem that long ago, it was a whole different time in wrestling where each week you would turn on, you go, oh my God, there's Dick Slater. Oh my God, the Junkyard Dog. Oh my God, as a wrestling fan, you never knew, who was going to be there from week to week, especially if you weren't getting any of the certain sheets or whatever that told you what was happening. I remember being at the sports arena the night when they had Rick Rude out just doing matches on the road to get him ready before they introduced him, and all of a sudden, Scott Casey's in the ring, and all of a sudden here comes Rick Rude, and you could hear it through the audience. It's Rick Rude. Oh my God, it's Rick Rude. We just saw him a few weeks ago, and he was part of the NWA World Tag Team Champions.
Yeah, and it's funny because Dan, you and I being at our age, so many people have listened to us. People younger than us. So many people have listened to us, like, reminisce. Like you mentioned earlier, when Blassie passed, we were just like, wow, end of an era, and they see us getting wistful and sentimental, and they were probably like, yeah, whatever. And, 8 years later, they're getting their first, round of that.
Yeah, and by the way, I believe, didn't Blassie pass away 8 years ago, either yesterday or today?
I
believe I saw that someplace.
Something about
I think it was
June
2nd. Yeah, I think it was today. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
And and even though he lived a nice long life into his 80s, I was still quite sad when I heard that. It's like you said.
Oh yeah.
You have memories of your childhood. Somebody who was part of the entertainment that you enjoyed. I mean, those are very sentimental memories.
Well, yeah. I mean, and I remember with Blassie, I remember it was one of those things with Fred is that it felt like he was damn near indestructible because, that he had all the medical problems throughout the years and all the transplants, excuse me, and all those things. And it's just like he just kept coming. He just kept coming. And he would not stop. And I remember, the night they did that whole thing with the WWF where they were where they were trying to rally the troops before they went into the big invasion.
ECW?
The big invasion thing where they brought in Blassie and then he stood up. That was a great moment, and that was the kind of thing that Fred could really sell. And I was lucky enough to meet and talk to Fred several times throughout his life. And I remember one time, and again, it was one of those things where we interviewed him for a TV show. And the crew, crews on TV shows they try to be really cool because they see a lot of people who are stars and whatever. And the crew that was on this show had actually just done something with Reagan prior to that. But they were all freaking excited that Freddie Blassie was there. And they all got pictures with him afterwards. But I remember somebody saying something about tanning because Fred was always tanning. Even down toward the end, he would tan as much as he could. And somebody said, "Aren't you worried about cancer?" And he goes, something pops up, and I go in and have it cut off, and I keep going. And that's kind of like how you felt, And that's kind of, I think, what was disappointing, too, because to bring it around to what we were saying before, like Blassie, I imagine Savage to be around for a real long time. I really thought he would be around for a real long time and be one of those colorful guys they would bring out from time to time and to do that kind of stuff. And that's why I think it became really, really sad when he passed away because, as I was saying, I really thought when they finished that video that they were going to say that he was going to go in the Hall of Fame next year.
It'll be interesting to see if they do.
I think it's for sure, yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, and it's going to be one of those things where you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't, because there's some people that are going to be irritated because they waited until after he died to put him in, and there's some people that will be irritated if they don't put him in. My feeling is, we can, the background story about why, he's been persona non grata all these years, there's all kinds of rumors and stuff that you can go through. But the fact of the matter is, just plain and simple, is he needs to be there. Not he deserves to be there. He needs to be there.
Yes. I agree. I mean, that's a given. And it's like you say, damned if you do, damned if you don't. And, it's the WWE Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
Whoever goes in there, goes in there. It's not something that they're going to rack their brains over.
Yeah.
Safe bet that they'll be inducting Randy and Elizabeth together, I'm sure, as a couple.
I don't know about that.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know about that. Here's the thing is, usually there's one dead guy every year. I hate to say it that way, but it's true. Usually there's one.
The Von Erich
dead guy.
counts as one dead guy together.
Yeah, the whole Von Erich family counts as a dead guy, But I think because of the fact,
Kevin, come on.
I think because of the fact that, again, the Elizabeth story is so sad.
Yeah.
I mean, she came in, and then again, Savage had his demons, and there were all kinds of problems there. And then she got out of the business, and I never forgot the story that went around how she was working in a department store, and people would come by and and recognize her as
what I'll never forget is people acting like, oh wow, she's at bottom. She works in the department store, and my feeling at the time is, no, she escaped the business. It's not a healthy place necessarily.
Well, here's the thing.
But I was wrong.
She came back.
Yeah, I know, but this was before she came back. At the time, I thought, no, she got out. It's probably a wise thing on her, for her to do. And then she came back, and I didn't think twice about it. But well.
Well, yeah, I mean, that was the whole thing. At the time, it seemed like a good idea at the time for her. And there was all kinds of things there. And I think that her story takes even a different trajectory than Savage's does. And I just think that inducting both of them and both of them being passed would bring somewhat of a downer. Whether or not, I mean, I agree. I would think that they belong as a team in there, but I just don't see the WWE doing them as a team. I could be wrong, but
That's really surprising because I sort of think the opposite. I sort of think people would go, since she was so, so a part of his history in WWE, that people would just naturally think, all this footage, just everything is Macho and Elizabeth.
Yeah.
But why wouldn't
actually
she?
I actually agree with Ryan on this one. Because I don't think they'll focus on her sad demise. I think
they were public enough about the divorce and everything that
they're not going to bring all that up, though. I don't think they're going to paint it the way WWE paints it, and they're going to paint it as a very, the first, couple, the wonderful couple, And Vince has a way of using, today's topics and such for his benefit, and with the royal wedding having just happened and things like that, I think he'll use this, and he'll use it as sort of the headline for the Hall of Fame next year, in my opinion.
Well, I agree that I agree that she belongs in there. I just don't think that Vince is going to do it.
Yeah.
I think that, if you look at the way things are forming for next year, they're in Florida, okay? You figure, I got to figure, well, they're doing The Rock probably for sure.
Well, they were gonna do. Yeah, well, yeah, that's the thing. Now they were gonna do The Rock, and they like to have one main eventer each year.
Yeah, you can save Macho Man for next year, the following year.
Well, no, I think they will do Macho Man next year.
Oh, do you?
I think they will with Rock and with Macho because they can tie that in and I'm going to guess that maybe like Lanny Poffo accepts. Something like that.
And the induction, maybe something like that.
Yeah, and then you got to figure they'll pick somebody from the other people from the Florida area to put in there who are still around, something like that. But
Mike Graham.
Our old buddy Mike Graham. No, Luger. I could see Luger being inducted.
Well, he's working with them now.
You can't put Luger in with Savage and Elizabeth going in.
That's a good point. I take that back. That's a real good point.
Yeah. I think Luger will probably be in Atlanta, like whenever they go back to Atlanta again.
Yeah.
I could see them putting somebody like Steve Kern in, though. If you have Coco Beware.
They can put it in the Fabulous ones, don't they, on the AWA footage?
What about
they do
Spaceman Frank Hickey? Spaceman Frank Hickey.
Spaceman has to be in there.
And somebody could come dressed up as him to accept the award. Somebody not related to him, somebody who never even met him or knew him.
No, I know who they should induct. Bahamas champion Tyree Pride.
There you go.
There you go, yeah.
Kevin Sullivan was in Florida.
Kevin Sullivan, that's right, yeah.
That's right, Kevin Sullivan.
They'll never bring him in because they think he really killed the Benoit.
Oh, God.
They should have it be Kevin Sullivan and Lex Luger as part of the...
How about King Curtis is dead, too. You can't do two dead guys.
They get the most depressing Hall of Fame ever.
Yeah, all dead guys.
Hall of Fame, 2012.
Yeah.
So then, Bix and Fredo, do you guys think then that Randy and Elizabeth will be inducted together? Bix, you said no, right?
I just don't see it as something they do. It's just because. No, just because how things ended with them too. I mean, even if Liz was alive.
Yeah.
I mean, or if she had died in a different way, if she died in a car accident, even, I don't think they would do it. Induct them together.
Fredo, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you changed my mind. I think they might, because I mean, how else would Elizabeth get in?
That's true.
Yes.
They're going in on her own.
It would be the perfect dual entry.
Yeah.
Oh, it would be. It's like anything else. You flip a coin with that company. You have no idea. Somebody said to me, they go, it always happens whenever somebody dies and they start talking about wrestling heaven. That always happens. And I'm sure all you guys have heard it, where people have gone, well, he's with Elizabeth now. And I'm thinking, maybe Elizabeth doesn't want to be with him. No offense there.
I thought I could be away from you.
And somebody, exactly. Not so fast. But I think also, I always said to somebody, I said, yeah, but I said if we're working angles, then remember Sherry's up there too.
That's right.
You know, but
by the way, I was gonna, I kept wanting to mention earlier that, with everything that people have been saying about Savage, one thing that people haven't really been talking about is that not that he was stale, but Sherry really freshened up to his act.
Oh God, she was crazy too. I mean, they were perfect together.
They were great together. They were great.
It was the loony leading the loony, I mean, they really, truly were. They were actually. I mean, I remember. You remember that leading into that horrendous cage match with Beefcake and Hogan against
those promos, man.
And Savage. But they had those promos where they had part of the cage up
in front of them,
and she kept climbing up and down, and she would appear from nowhere out of different places. They were so good together.
All of a sudden, she'd be coming from the side angle of the camera, crawling across the like a spider.
She would climb up to the left-hand side, then she would climb down on the right-hand side, or she would go across. Or they were perfect together. They really were.
The cauldron of madness.
That's right.
Oh, could you imagine if you threw Kevin Sullivan into that batch?
Oh God!
And who could ever forget Macho getting the wicked guitar shot by Honky Tonk Man with the Heart Foundation holding him? I mean, that was a guitar. That was a.
Oh. Well, I mean, I also, when you think of wicked shot, I always automatically think of the one bump Elizabeth took.
Ooh, where you just.
Oh, where Macho landed.
Where Macho hit her. Oh my God,
Yeah.
And of course, Hogan's wonderful acting in that. Breathe, Elizabeth. Breathe, Elizabeth.
Go help Randy.
Go help Randy.
Design.
Yeah,
Design.
Inspiration for
countdown.
Susan Powder. You've got to breathe.
All right. Oh, the countdown is wonderful. The countdown is wonderful in that. Well, give me a cue, brother, whenever we're ready to go. That whole thing. Him getting caught on, Hogan getting, it just shows to show you that Hogan's never done a cue right in his entire life. So, it's just one of those things with him. But, no, I mean, again, you look back at that stuff. I mean, who can forget the end of Survivor Series? Hogan picks up Elizabeth, puts him on the shoulder, and Savage shoots a look at him.
And he's like pointing at him and looking.
I remember I looked at that and I said, and here's where it begins. And it's exactly what it was. And the funny thing about it was, really, when you look at it, they turned him heel, but all he was doing was suspecting that Hogan was messing around with his wife.
Back in the days when they really planned ahead.
Well, yeah, I mean,
where now they change everything week by week.
I was thinking about it now when you were saying earlier that the feud, was over a year. You forget that it kept going, so the feud was.
Well, no, it did. I mean, because the groundwork.
I mean, not the feud. The whole program then was really.
Well, the whole program because that was.
That was like 2.5 years.
Yeah, because I mean, if you look at it, how they laid out the turn going into WrestleMania. Hogan helping him win the belt. They went through the whole, a year after that, and they got the build. So, and then they did matches after that. So it was you're right, longer than a year.
Right, and the Buster Douglas match was I think, February 1990.
Yeah.
Well, see, again, and that also speaks to the staying power that these guys were able to keep it fresh, and Savage was always able to bring something to it. And I can't. It's really easy to beat on Hulk right now. It's always been easy to beat on Hulk. Period. But again, as we have always talked about, Kurt, you and I have always talked about how if wrestling is like a dance, you're only as good as your partner. And
yes.
Hogan had freaking Fred Astaire for his partner. Because
it's so
Savage,
true. That's a good way of putting it.
Savage got a lot more out of that than anybody else would have,
and especially more consistently than anyone else.
Yeah, exactly.
He was still getting stuff out of Hogan going back into WCW too. Even though the matches were horrible, they were still drawing big ratings.
Yeah, well, he always did. Though he was always good with Flair too.
Yeah. Well, the matches were pretty good.
The thing about Savage in interviews, again, it's something that you can't you can't teach. Either you develop it or you don't. But I posted it on my Facebook page. But one of my favorite interviews is that little 30-second interview he did prior to WrestleMania, to the match, where the line that I always remember was "History beckons the Macho Man." And again, you could put him and say, we got to kill 3 minutes, and he and Okerlund would easily kill 3 minutes. Or you could say, you got 15 seconds, sell it, and he could do it in 15 seconds. And it's just so rare when you think about a worker as good as he was, who had all that ability and all that talent.
Yeah.
And in fact, it would have not behooved his own career. He would have had no reason to do so. But he's one guy I would have loved to seen, like, work Mexico, work Japan, because I bet you he could have, fit in like nobody could.
I think he could adjust. I think he would make the needed adjustment.
Henry matches.
Yeah.
That's true, actually. Yes. I didn't even think of that.
But he was pretty old by that point, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think he would have fit in anywhere he went. He would have had no reason to, because
well, I
the
mean,
money
look
he
what
was
he could
making
do.
here.
When you think about when he went into the Royal Rumble, the one with Yokozuna, he was a TV announcer still, pretty much at that time, I believe, wasn't he? Still, yeah.
Yeah, he was.
No, he was. No, that Royal Rumble was just a few months off of him losing the title.
Oh, okay.
Well, he was the face, but no, this was not a few months after losing the title, because he was the face by that time.
No. After he lost the title the second time, the Flair.
Oh, the second time. That's right. Okay, but I still remember, again, here was a guy who had been around for a long time, and when it came down to, everybody pretty much knew that Yokozuna was going to go to WrestleMania. That was the whole idea. But when those two guys were last, it's hard to watch that footage and not believe for a moment. Savage may actually pull this out. That whole part, you go, is this going to be different? Is this something, And then they did that great elimination where, again, you have to work really hard to make this happen, where Yokozuna, kicked out, and pushed Savage over the top rope.
Apparent reason.
Yeah, exactly. And it took him right over the top rope or whatever. And then again, you look at his announcing with McMahon. It worked well, and I still also remember that time when Flair came in, and Savage and Piper both grabbed a chair and went down to help, to help Hogan at that point. So I mean, that was a great time when you look back again at all the firepower and all the guys they had at that point, and the guys that really could, I do believe that old saying sometimes that great wrestlers are born, not made, may actually be true.
You know what?
There's not only a lot of truth to it, but I think nowadays, like with WWE, there's a lot of guys who probably are already great wrestlers, but the way they're being processed, they're all coming out homogenized.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's a different business. I mean, it's like in that interview with Terry Funk that Brian and Dave did a few months ago, how Terry Funk said, they need a Bruiser Brody nowadays, and Dave actually came up with the line, yeah, but if Bruiser Brody came to WWE, it'd make him shave his beard and get a haircut.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think, again, it's like we talked about before in other shows, when you judge the guys from today, and you judge the guys from, say, 20 years ago, you have to put different criteria to it because,
yes.
For example, John Cena is a big star, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But, you can't compare him in a way to somebody from another time period because the training and the background and everything was all different. I mean, Cena has taken the elements and the environment he was in, and has achieved this by using that. And Savage was a product of an entirely different time, and he was able to do that also. So I mean, there are probably a lot of guys, if you turn them loose, you could you could see that. But I mean, nothing is more painful than trying to watch the Tough Enough guys do interviews. Oof.
This is so true.
They were awful.
So and it's like you say, Dan. It's like I could come up, and I know we talk a lot about, we reminisce on how cool we like the way it used to be done, and that's just our generation. But that's every generation. I remember in the 1970s, hearing older guys talk about, oh no, they don't know how to work these days. The way to work was how we did it back in the 50s. And I guarantee you, the wrestlers in the 50s, were doing the same thing.
Oh yeah, I'm sure if you talk to the guys, the guys who worked in the 20s and 30s were horrified when Gorgeous George came along.
Exactly. The business is always going to change, and we're all going to have our own view of what wrestling is. But in my view, if you put wrestling on the marquee and people are paying to see it, whether I think it's cool or not, hey, it's wrestling.
Well, unless your name's Vince McMahon, then you don't believe that. It's right.
That's right. I stand corrected. Boy, do I stand corrected.
The marquee out front says entertainment. How dare you? That's a good idea. Let's put Ole Anderson in the Hall of Fame. That would be funny.
If we wanted to be really cruel, have him come do an acceptance speech.
You sit there and you have Arn introduce him, and the first thing Arn says is, look, this wasn't my idea, so whatever he says, don't hold it to me, all right?
That's right. And remember, he's not really my father.
Yeah.
Or my uncle, or my cousin, or my brother.
I liked Ole when he was with the Horsemen, man.
Ole was great, except he reminds you he reminds you of that guy that stood on his front lawn and yelled at the kids to get off his grass. I mean, that's what,
I started watching some of the old Georgia, and he just looked like a real badass, like.
Oh, there was that great thing they did when with Jimmy Hart, when they brought Jimmy Hart in, and they had Ole smack him around on television.
Yes.
Do you remember that one?
I never saw
was great. Oh, that's a great thing.
Awesome.
Where is that, Georgia or Memphis?
That was in Georgia.
Because they were working with Memphis.
Yeah, they were working with them. They brought Lawler in, and they had Jimmy Hart in there. And
what year was this?
84, 85.
Oh.
Yeah.
I always thought Ole was great on the mic, and I loved him in the ring too. But I think we all know that's not why people roll their eyes when they hear the name Ole Anderson.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
there are 100 Randy Savages. There are 100 Ric Flairs.
Ole and Thunderbolt Patterson. That was a great tag team. That one cracked me up, boy, I tell you.
Remember, California, 1986.
Well, you look at it, though, think about it, with Ole, I mean, again, there's another situation, talk about taking somebody's own personality and amping it up. He reminded, to me, when he was a heel, he was every bully you ever knew in high school.
Yeah.
And I remember, though, when they needed to turn him face, they did that whole thing where they gave him a hard time, the Horsemen gave him a hard time about missing some party or some match or whatever because he was at his son's wrestling match. and Ole took it, and within 5 minutes, boom, he was one of the biggest faces in the group. And when they came time to turn all the Horsemen back on Sting and make them all heels again, they brought out Ole.
Yeah.
Because Ole could do it.
Well, I actually was present at the Omni.
I was going to bring this up.
Oh, my God. I'll never forget that. The WFIA Wrestling Fans Convention, that used to be an annual event, was in Georgia the first time I ever went. This was in 1980. And I remember the main event was Harley Race versus Tommy Rich. But the match I will never forget was a cage match. It was Dusty Rhodes and Ole Anderson against the Assassins. And, who was managing?
Oh, no, it was the referees.
The referees. There were two referees, one for the heels, one for the faces. Mm-hmm. And Gene Anderson was the babyface referee. And Ivan Koloff was the referee for the heels team. And it was in a cage.
This doesn't sound good for Dusty Rhodes.
What's that?
This doesn't sound good for Dusty Rhodes.
Exactly. Well, no, the funny thing is, believe it or not, we were all sitting there, and I can't remember which fan it was. It might have been Barry Rose. Only one fan thought of that. He said, "Oh my God, since they're all in the cage, do you think Ole's turning heel?" But the funny thing is, Ole gave absolutely no hint in weeks before about turning heel, which whenever somebody turns heel, they don't give the fans enough credit. They have to wave all these red flags in the weeks beforehand to show, I'm going to turn bad. So watch closely. I will turn bad. Look. Well, it was one of the coolest things I ever seen on the live card, because when they all turned on Dusty and when he juiced big time, I mean, you have a cage full of wrestlers just beating on him, and they had all the babyface wrestlers hit the ring and try to climb the cage to help him. I can only assume that the reason they had all the wrestlers hit the cage is they were worried what the fans were going to do.
Yeah.
I never seen so many fans freaking out.
It would have to be, because I can't imagine all the wrestlers actually running down to save Dusty. That's the whole...
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so true.
They're all cheering.
Oh, did I miss my cue? I'm so sorry. But, I've even seen these badass bikers freaking out and crying. And then there's this one kid who looked like he, from a distance, looked like a college boy, looked like well-groomed, handsome, intelligent. He's just walking around almost like a zombie, and you see tears streaming down his face, and he just screams, Dusty! And I just sat there saying, I've never seen, of course, I grew up in LaBelle territory, so, I was used to the fans saying, oh, what shit are they going to give us this week?
Now, Kurt,
but I've never seen a live reaction.
I buy the fan screaming Dusty, but are you trying to tell us that you actually saw bikers crying because Dusty Rhodes was being beaten up?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Dream, baby.
They love their
Dusty. Were these guys, man? Come on.
They were probably there going, oh, my God, this is almost as sad as the time that Randy Savage took my friend's eye out in Memphis. And you were lucky to be there, Kurt, because that's a rarity. Dusty bleeding all over the place. That very rarely ever happens.
I know. I thought I'm gonna just hold this moment dear in my heart because I'll never see him bleed like a stuffed pig again.
Hey,
the only time I ever saw a crowd reaction like that live, I mean, not the same reaction, but as intense a reaction, was when Misawa went over Jumbo Tsuruta in Japan in 1990. And not just the pop when he won, but all the near pops when he almost won. I mean, those were the two greatest reactions I've seen, or how should I put it? The two greatest live just reactions I've seen from crowds at a show. I mean, those were incredible.
I don't know. I'd be hard-pressed, Kurt, to beat that AAA show with Savage and Conan in the cage.
Savage and Conan?
I'm sorry. That'd been a hell of a match. Conan and Jake Roberts in a cage. That won the Sports Arena.
True, actually.
Do you know that's the only? I looked over at Mike Tenay, who had been through every kind of match in the world and every ride at the Olympic Auditorium, and Tenay looked scared.
Wow.
And all I did was I sat there and I'm looking and we're watching cups of urine fly by. We saw a diaper fly by. I'm looking there and I'm watching. They're trying to get them out of the cage, and I thought, oh my God, I'm going to die.
Yeah.
And not only am I going to die, I brought my wife. Which is even worse.
In a cup.
Because man,
those crowds were pretty intense, I must admit. And the heat with Eddie Guerrero and Art Barr, I'll never forget them running back in the dressing room and running right to the nearest sink because people pelted them with nachos and the jalapeno got in their eyes.
Oh, God.
And they're just cursing up a storm, just running for the nearest wet towel or water they could find,
Hey, Kurt, that wrestling fan convention that you went to back, what year was this?
That was 1980. In fact, something that was really enjoyable at Cauliflower Alley this past year was the night of the banquet. Tom Burke waves me over and he says, Kurt, we're going to get a WFIA reunion picture. So he got together all the people at Cauliflower Alley banquet who had been to those conventions and got a group pic with us all together. So that was fun.
That's neat.
Wow. I mean, all those nerds in one place at one time.
Well, let's see. There was
had any of them, besides yourself, ever known the touch of a woman?
What do you mean I don't know the touch of a woman?
I didn't say you.
Yeah, I've touched myself before.
Well, let's go right past that. But no, because I have to imagine and this is no offense, because a lot of those guys are really great guys. But what was it like? I mean, this is where they would get together, right? And they would dress up in suit and tie, and they would give trophies to their favorite wrestlers, and they would have awards for fan club. That's fan club thing. And
the cool thing about these conventions were they would schedule them in a different region each year, and they would schedule it if the local promoter would have wrestlers come appear at the convention, and they'd get kind of carte blanche treatment at the shows. It was actually a very cool thing. Yeah, and you got your share of characters too. But the one who I remember most fondly was the year they had it in Houston, Texas, in '81. I'll never forget this man. His name was Calvin Hambrick from McAllen, Texas. And they like Cauliflower Alley. They had their all their tables where the people are selling their wares and that sort of stuff. Well, this guy, Calvin Hambrick, just had a table smothered with Lucha Libre magazines. So you can imagine, oh my Lord, I was like in hog heaven. And I go up to Calvin, I'm saying, introduce myself, and says, "Oh, you're from California?" And,
did he say it just that way?
And I'm not exaggerating. I swear to God, I am not exaggerating the voice. In fact, I'm probably underdoing it. And he looked like a Calvin Hambrick. He was probably in his 30s, but looked more like he was in his 50s, and very soft face. And he wouldn't call me Kurt. He called me California. and he would say, "So you want to buy some of these Mexican magazines?" And I go, "Yes, I do." Huh? He would, after you answered every question, he would follow up with, "Huh?" He said, I said, "Well, I'll tell you, I'll sell them to you for 25 cents a piece or 5 for $1. That sound like a good deal?" "Yes, it does." Huh?
So you met Hank Hill as a teenager, obviously.
Yeah. Totally. And needless to say, at that time I weighed about 110 pounds. I had not yet hit a gym in years, and so I had to not carry my suitcase, but push my suitcase, back into the airport terminal. I bought so many Lucha mags from this guy. Oh my God. That's where I have 3/4 of my collection come from Calvin Hambrick. Although there was one magazine.
That's 3/4 of my collection, isn't it?
That's right. Yes. I guarantee, Fredo, you have some Calvin Hambrick originals.
Yeah, but
and what I'll never.
Did he sell them to you for $0.25 a piece, Fredo? Though.
No, and I didn't get a story with it either.
Yeah.
What? No. There's one copy he had to sell me for 75 cents.
Oh.
And that's because the cover was autographed by Solitario.
Oh wow.
Oh my God.
So, yeah, he had to do a full set. I got to charge a little more because it has the autograph on it. And I was very, very bummed when he passed away. God bless Calvin Hambrick. I love that guy.
He has the perfect name for a wrestling fan too. Doesn't Calvin Hambrick
doesn't it
like
sound
somebody?
like it should be? Exactly. You're so right. Doesn't it sound like a wrestling fan's name?
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah,
sounds
but
like
those
type of guy you see in Pen Pal. He sounds like one of the guys you see in the Pen Pal section of the magazine.
Yeah.
Likes good guys. Favorite wrestler, Tommy Rich.
Yes, exactly.
Once for pen pals, once girls, and look at the picture, and the guy looks like Jeffrey Dahmer or something.
Yeah, once girls for pen pals, but only if their livers are healthy.
Yes.
Oh, but at Cauliflower, the people, the old WFI people were Darla Staggs Taylor, who used to be a huge Eddie Gilbert supporter before he was famous.
Oh, I remember her. Yes. Okay.
Yeah, very nice lady. Lord Zoltan, a.k.a. Ken Jugan.
Oh, God. That's a name from the past.
Yes. Dave Brzezinski, who used to be a manager under the name of Dave Drayson. And Eric Goldberg. Or Eric Goldenberg. I'm botching the name. Yeah, I think they kind of folded. The WFIA folded like mid-'80s, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, it was a creature of its times.
And there was a spin-off group or something, and there were 2 WFIAs at one point. Wasn't something like that?
I vaguely remember something like that happening. But what was really cool, when they would have their banquet, the promoters would have the wrestlers sit at tables with the fans, and the promoters, especially Paul Bosch just gave the fans red carpet treatment. And, they were a kick. Those were fun conventions.
By the way, Kurt, remember how a few weeks ago I had told you about this thing that my cousin had told me he found at the library, the Paul Bosch scrapbook?
Oh.
Yes.
Oh, wait, I think I mentioned it on here, didn't I?
I think you did.
Yeah, because Paul Bosch, I forget if he grew up here or moved here when he was a teenager or something, but here in Long Beach in New York, but he graduated from high school here. He, lived here at least several years, wrestling in New York, working as a lifeguard in the summer, introduced to and Helen Hart, and for I guess it was the 50th anniversary of 50th or 75th anniversary of Long Beach, being incorporated or whatever, he sent this big scrapbook of, pictures from news agencies, articles, a lot of, mostly stuff with him, but also Helen Hart and her sisters, Helen Hart's dad, the first thing is a letter on the Houston Wrestling letterhead, and, talking about all of his memories and stuff, and a couple weeks back, I finally, took it out, looked at it, and was able to Xerox just about all the good stuff. I'm going to try to get that scanned soon. Just haven't been having trouble getting my scanner working with my new computer.
Oh, man, would so love to see that.
Oh, but Bix, I swear to God, you were starting to say newspaper. I thought for a second you were going to say it has all these pictures of news in them. I thought, oh my God, I don't want to see Paul Bosch naked. What the hell is that?
I heard you said, I thought he was talking about, and then he mentioned Helen Hart. I'm like, what?
It's okay. I thought he was going to bring up Dark Journey again.
Let's don't start that all over again. No,
because as you said, she is dead.
Oh God!
Right, Dan?
She's not dead. She's just resting.
Hey, Kurt.
Then I'll wake her up.
Kurt, Mark Cole.
Journey.
Hey, Kurt. Mark Cole said he found another letter that you sent the Observer.
Really? Which one?
Yeah, he said it includes you thinking Brutus Beefcake was too cartoonish.
Yeah, I had a foul mind back then.
Kurt,
Lord.
Kurt anything was too cartoonish. It's kind of nuts.
Oh yeah, no, that was my way wrong snobbish phase. I had just discovered Japanese wrestling.
Oh, when you were into work
the year before, and I just thought they were too cool for anything. I had a really sick mind back then, a very sick mind.
Back then.
I can say
back
that.
then. What about now?
I can just say that. Dear Dave, I find that Brutus Beefcake is way too cartoonish, but I would much rather watch Misala or any Tiger Mask or those people at all.
Or Bull Nakano.
Or Bull Nakano, yeah.
And I think that is how my voice sounded back then, too.
It did back then. It's that deviated septum you had, yeah.
Follow the yellow brick road. Follow the yellow brick road.
Well, that's how I always imagine. That's how I always imagine, like, when you read those letters, it's even better if you go back to like the old Wrestling Review magazines and read the letter page.
That's what I do not miss about being young is I took things way too seriously back then.
Well, but then again, also think about wrestling. I mean, there's phases you go through. You either love it as a kid, and sometimes you can turn into a wrestling snob, and like certain things, and then you loosen up. But it's like you would read. I swear to God, some of those, like in the wrestling review. That's why I think I'll dig some of those out some night, and maybe we'll read some of those on the air, because there were these great things like I must tell you that I am very upset that Ivan Koloff, a known communist, is making money in this country while we are,
I used to love those questions they'd ask the wrestlers, they had about like 10 wrestlers, on these 2 pages, and they asked them questions like, who's your most hated wrestler of all time, or your most hated opponent? And they always had Bruno Sammartino. Doggone it, it was that no good Larry Zbyszko,
Bruno, they'd always write exactly how you'd make fun of Bruno talking.
That's right.
Yes. And I love to throw every stereotypical thing they could put in. If they're writing a story about Bruno, they would say he was so upset at how the match went down earlier that all he could do was stare at his pasta and did not touch it.
Yeah. It was always wonderful. Then Dominic DeNucci would always be like, Mamma mia, I can't understand why he let me do something. Like, they would all do that. Or Professor Tanaka was, oh, you think you're so smart. They all. That's one of those things you look back. It's like when you watch an old movie, and sometimes there'll be somebody in blackface, and you go,
yeah.
I know it was a different time period and everything, but if you take a look at that, it's like I think I said a couple of weeks ago, after the Osama bin Laden death, I kept thinking that there had to be 4,000 independent shows across the country where like an Arab heel was going to come out and want a 10 count for Osama bin Laden, because that kind of stuff, there was so many, if you look, think about it, in the 1950s, all the Nazi wrestlers, and World War II was only like 10 years prior to that.
Yes, true.
And you have to. I mean, it's kind of the same way. I remember, even being a little, and when I say squeamish, it's not like it was a big deal, but when you would read about how in Stampede had the Viet Cong Express, and it's kind of like, is this really where we want to go with this stuff? I know that.
And it was especially worse there because I can't remember which heart it would use racial or ethnic slurs at them.
It's probably all of them.
Probably Bruce.
Probably Bruce.
Bruce, yeah. Exactly.
He was tagging with Tillman back then. So.
But Fredo, you mentioned about the iPad earlier. One of the things I love about it is every Sunday morning I can buy a copy of Super Luchas for 99 cents.
Yeah, I know. I do that with the iPod Touch too.
Yeah, I mean it's it was funny because before they even announced Averno, there was the Super Luchas saying Averno's going to WWF, for E.
Well, in fact, as we wind up, let's get predictions from everybody, or just wild guesses. What do you think they'll do with Averno in WWE, and will it work? Dix?
He'll feud with Sin Cara, then something else will happen. And then he'll be released, and then he'll go to AAA.
That's simple.
How about you, Dan?
They'll take the mask off him and call him Bob Rodriguez. He'll come out with a leaf blower or something, probably.
He can actually replace Ricardo Rodriguez. Nobody's ever brought that
We
up.
can't use Rodriguez. It would be. Oh, I know. Let's bring back Juan Caruso, one of my favorite jobbers from the 1970s.
There you go.
Do you guys? Anybody know Juan Caruso?
No.
He's one of those names I saw all the time.
Juan Caruso was a little squat older guy, and this is like what most of the jobbers look like then. Very ethnic looking, long curly hair, and and his regular tag team partner, because this is back when the jobbers had regular tag team partners. And he had a guy named Vincente the Bull Palmente. And he would wear a serape and would bring out bolos, and he would twirl the bolos over his head.
Wow, very cool stuff.
We could bring those guys back, or there was
Averno do that,
or one of my favorite ones, Cowboy Hondo.
Yes, I remember Cowboy Hondo. Doesn't it sound like the name of a used car salesman?
I know. There was some great ones back then, but no, I think what they'll do is like what the same thing kind of Dix was saying is they'll bring him out, and I think they probably are going to wind up bringing 2 or 3 other guys in, figuring maybe eventually we can get him over. I think if they want to help get him over, they ought to introduce a beautiful girl that brings the trampoline out each week to put it in front of the ring for him to jump on.
There you go.
Yeah, but I think the same thing. They'll go through that, and I still like the idea that Steve Sims has, and that is you eventually team up him with Rey Mysterio, and they win the tag belts, and then Rey turns on him in WrestleMania.
That would be cool.
I think they're going to have him go into the ring surrounded by wrestlers. Surrounded by superstars. And he's going to break down crying and say that he's Karma's baby's father.
Man, now, see, you know what? I'd pay for that porn before I would Shauna's. I tell you right now.
That would actually be great.
Yeah.
That would work.
By the way, since this is so unlike anything WWE's done before, are we to presume that this is part of the whole Triple H being in charge of Sin Cara thing?
You mean just the way that they're bringing these guys in, especially whereas in the old days they would just job him out to Jim Powers and let him go, that kind of thing?
Right, yeah. I mean, at this point they'd be like, oh, he can't work.
Well, I do think that they know that Mexico can be a really big market for him, and I think that if it was any other time, they probably would just kind of, cut their bait and let it go. But I think that they're really going to. I mean, I know there's a lot of, you hear a lot of people. It's interesting. It's about 50-50 split. There are a lot of people that say, hey, let's let him go, keep working with him, he'll get there. And there are other people, but these are mostly people who don't like Lucha Libre, are saying, well, I gotta get rid of him. It's not working. It's a failure.
It's not that it's not working. It's because he's wrestling Chavo Guerrero.
Well, that's true.
I agree. I thought he actually looked really good with people like Daniel Bryan.
Even the Sheamus match kind of made sense, the way that when he...
Yeah,
yes.
Exactly. I think it was just, it's a bad matchup. And that's, again, a situation where they look at it and they go, oh, well, Chavo is Mexican, so obviously, he'll be perfect.
The other thing is, I don't think they watch... I mean, obviously, they never watched Mystico.
No.
He can't do anything else besides big high spots. He doesn't.
It's going to be it'll be very interesting to see what winds up. But I think they'll sign a nice thing. Averno will come in. He'll work for a while doing that, and then he'll basically job out. And as he says, go to AAA.
I don't think he's going to AAA.
Yeah, but remember, he's going to be on Mass, though. But he's going to be on Mass, though, and if the CMLL decides not to take him back, it doesn't matter if he has a new name.
They'll bring him back.
Yeah, I think
he's not a bad guy, though.
But he didn't tell him about this in advance.
Yeah, he's going about it kind of the right way, though.
I thought he didn't tell them about it at first, or whatever.
No, none of them will tell anybody, anyways. Kurt just hung up.
Who? Kurt?
Kurt,
are you there?
Oh no!
I think he's having phone problems.
I think he's having phone problems too because somebody's phone sounded like they were in a wind tunnel when they started out.
Somebody's getting ready for Impact Wrestling.
I think we're holding him off from letting him watch Impact.
Kurt was,
we have to wait for him to come back so we can do the ending.
Oh, that's true.
End the show without him.
Kurt just wrote, a couple of days ago that he had come home sick with like 102 temperature, and I was curious if he was even going to be okay this evening. And obviously, if you were going to his house right now, you find him laying on the floor, the phone next to him, and a bottle of NyQuil next to him.
Can you guys hear me? Can you guys hear me?
What's going on, Kurt?
Guys, quick, if you guys are listening, call 411 right now.
I need muscle powder. I need muscle powder.
Quick, It gives me strength. I rub it in my hair, and it gives me great strength. I think I got cut off right.
What's going on, Bert? What's going on?
What you do, Curtis?
It's the second time I've been bumped.
Finish that
second
bottle.
time I've been bumped tonight.
Finish that bottle of NyQuil and then drink down a Four Loko, and you'll be fine.
If you see a tuning star.
I got bumped just when I made the prediction. The WWE is infiltrating our calls because I made my prediction about what they were going to do with Averno. Did you guys hear it, or was I cut off already?
They were cut off.
It was Vince. Somewhere Vince McMahon was sitting going, God damn it, cut that guy off before he kills everything.
He knows. My prediction is they are going to bring Averno in as El Hombre de El Espacio, Frank Hickey. And he's gonna flap his hands and bark like a chicken running around Sin Cara with saying, catch me if you can. And he's going to be calling out for K Monita to come save him. But since K Monito isn't in WWE, it'll all be in vain. And Hunter Hearst Helmsley will be saying, who the hell is K Monito?
Or he can go to AAA as Sin Averno.
Well, I guess yeah, it might work. Well, I guess since I keep getting bumped, I think it might be a good time to finalize this episode of Slammin' Stan. Thank you, all you cats. Alfredo, as always. Dan Farron, as always. Ryan Doyle, as always, at the Dixie Demon. And I'll even thank myself, Vandal Drummond. I don't know why I'm thanking me, but had a blast doing this episode tonight. Join us in another 2 weeks. And remember, folks, if you're walking down any street in any given neighborhood in the United States and you see a celestial staircase with a man wearing a crown, it is not a hierarchy of gods. No, it's the Macho Man, the King, Randy Savage.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Rockin'. See you in 2 weeks.
Dusty! Dusty!
And I only have one other thing to say. Wow!